Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Rank where I climb the online Series 11 ladder and provide live commentary as I go. Today we're kicking off our coverage of Series 11, and this is the exact same format as Series 8, which we played a couple of months ago. However, things definitely feel a little bit different just because for any of you that played Series 10, you know, it's transitioning from a non-Dynamax format to a Dynamax format definitely feels a little bit weird. And so for me, you know, I'm just trying to get back into the swing of things and relearning some of the calcs, you know, that are relevant to Dynamax and max moves in general. And so, yeah, it will definitely be a interesting start, and I'm excited to really just dive into Series 11 with you all, you know, re-explore some old strategies and teams and also try out some brand new stuff. So the first team I wanted to feature today is a one built around Calyrex-Ice Rider. Nothing too crazy here, but I think it's just a team that's relatively consistent. It was built by a Japanese player called Case K, and they were able to do really well in the Japanese online qualifiers for their national championships with this team. Had a really solid win rate with it, and overall, I think it is just a really stable team to climb the ladder with. So, yeah. You know, nothing too crazy here other than, I would say, the Dusclops set, but you have some fun tricks, right? So the general strategy with a team like this is always to ideally enable weakness policy on Calyrex and just sweep with it. Your two Dynamax options are almost always going to be Regigigas and Calyrex. There's some niche scenarios in which you can Dynamax Instant and Urshifu, but for the most part, it's going to be those two Pokemon. So the general goal is to often set up weakness policy with the Calyrex, get Trick Room up first, and then use Shadow Sneak from either Dusclops or Mimikyu to activate the weakness policy on the Calyrex and then go from there. Regigigas, however, is also a really strong max option, especially when you consider that there's Helping Hand support from Dusclops, and this can just one-shot a lot of common Pokemon in the format. It's also handy because Charizard is a really scary Pokemon to go up against and is really common in this format, and so Alecki just offers you a way to potentially one-shot Charizard. Even something like a Helping Hand Thunderbolt, for example, is really valuable into opposing Charizard. So, yeah. Your strongest lead is more often than not going to be like Instant Mimikyu or maybe Instant Dusclops, and then you just go for either a Fake Out Trick Room or even just a U-turn Trick Room turn 1. Even trading Incineroar to get Calyrex-Ice Rider in for free is often worth it if you can get the policy activation and just sweep with Calyrex. Calyrex is one of those Pokemon that's just super bulky, and it can snowball so quickly between the combination of weakness policy and, of course, its ability as well. So, yeah, thank you to KSK for the team. Details for the team are in the description below. Thank you to you all, as always, for watching. If you enjoy, please show your support by leaving a like. I'd really appreciate it. And question of the day, if you've already started playing Series 11, I want to know how the early format feels to you. Does it feel the exact same as Series 8? Is it weird getting back into the swing of things from a non-Dynamax format to a Dynamax format? Let me know in the comment section below. For me, I'd say I haven't really run into anything too crazy. It's all been stuff that, you know, we've seen in Series 8, but I do think that the metagame still has a lot of room to develop, and now that we've played a couple of months of it and people know what was previously good, I expect people to find like new Pokemon and strategies to counter what was previously common. So I think the first couple of weeks of the meta will probably be relatively same to what we saw in Series 8, but I certainly expect it to develop as time goes along. So let's get started. All right, first game of the day, and we're up against Weezing and Regigigas. Very cool. We're starting in Great Ball tier right now, so I got to climb my way back up. But this is definitely one of the more interesting teams that I've seen after playing a couple of practice matches just to get the hang of Dynamax once again. So Thundurus, Fini, Zacian, Landorus, Weezing, and Regigigas. Okay. So Weezing and Gigas is the main lead I'm scared of. Especially because Weezing does get access to Taunt. But I think we can just go Incineroar plus Mimikyu and honestly just fake out Weezing turn 1. So I think Instant Mimikyu Calyrex is fine. It's a question of what I want as the fourth. I think Urshifu is probably the more consistent one, but Alecki gives me a better Fini answer actually in the late game, which I think is pretty valuable for us here. So I'm going to go with that. I think I played, what, 5 games so far just to get the hang of the format and get used to Dynamaxing again. And so far, you know, it's a lot of Pokemon I've expected to see. I think the restrictors I went up against, like Zacian and Charizard, was actually on 4 of the 5 teams, so Charizard's like really common early meta. And like it's kind of scary to play against just because like it does so much damage. Can obviously one-shot Calyrex-Ice Rider, so you have to be a little bit careful about how you approach like the Charizard matchup specifically. But yeah, like, you know, mainly seeing Zacian, Calyrex, Groudon, and like that's not super surprising, right? Because those were some of the more dominant restricteds towards the end of Series 8. So yeah. Okay, so they're gonna go with Fini and Thundurus. I mean, I'm generally okay with this, especially because we have Snarl. The thing is, though, I actually have forgotten about Defiant Thundurus, so might have walked into a trap here. And after playing Series 10 for so long, all I think about when I see Thundurus is just like regular defensive Thundurus, so that's funny. But I don't think I'd actually would. Oh, maybe instead I could go with, I don't know, Mimikyu Dusclops is such an intriguing lead, or even just Mimi plus the Calyrex immediately. So this is interesting. Like, you can obviously like Wild Charge here, or just, I don't know, go for like a Max Knuckle. Thundurus seems like the obvious max option, but as a result, I could actually see Fini maxing where they like Wild Charge and then Max Geyser. So what I'm actually going to do here is Fake Out Thundurus anyway, and actually instead of clicking Fake Out, like I don't even think a Lightning into a Geyser KOs, truthfully. Or sorry, a Wild Charge into a Geyser. And like, yeah, I'm honestly fine activating Defiant here because if you Dynamax Thundurus, Calyrex-I just completely wrecks that. So I'm down a U-turn into Tapu Fini here and Trick Room. We also have Will-O-Wisp on Mimikyu and he can burn the Thundurus because it's not grounded despite Misty Terrain going up. So yeah, like the idea here, and yeah, they're gonna max the Tapu Fini, it looks like, or at least I assume so given the dive ball. But maybe it was Thundurus in that. Oh no, it was Thundurus in it. Okay. Cool. So that's fine. Like, let's say you max Knuckle the Incin and you knock that out. Like, the idea behind U-turn here is I always get to switch out, right? If you knock me out, well, I just get a free switch in that way. That didn't really deal that much. And the key thing here is now my opponent committed a Dynamax to a Pokemon that's incredibly weak to my Calyrex Ice Rider in the back. So, like, I'm okay activating Defiant here. They actually, unfortunately, missed Muddy Water. It's on the Mimikyu, though. Yeah, which is fine. Like, we're lucky there, mainly because it means there's no accuracy drop, and no accuracy drop means that, oh, this could be bad, though, if I miss the U-turn. But, okay, good. The main thing is accuracy drops, meaning that I can't, like, guarantee the self-activation on a weakness policy. That would have been pretty scary. But this is beautiful, right? Because now I just get the free switch into a Calyrex Ice Rider. I get Trick Room up, and I can just self-Shadow Sneak into Max Hailstorm. And it's like, even if Thundurus max guards, well, I still get 2 turns of Dynamax afterwards, right? Calyrex is going to get a KO onto it eventually, and it can snowball the game so quickly. And so Calyrex is one of those Pokemon that's pretty interesting because, like, more often than not, you actually like to not Dynamax. But here I'm just going to go for the safe self-Shadow Sneak into the Hailstorm, and the reason is here, like, Thundurus probably is going to max guard, but one, some Thunduruses back in Series 8 were Assault Vest, and so if they're AV, they literally cannot protect. What we don't want to fall into the trap of is, you know, reading into a Protect, targeting Fini, and then Thundurus just launching a +2 attack, you know, Max Darkness or Max Steel Spike into Calyrex. Now, Calyrex is bulky enough where I actually think he can survive those anyway, but I just don't think Fini applies that much offensive pressure with Muddy Water right now. Even if your choice specs, you don't do more than like 30% into Calyrex, and looks like they don't go for Protect here. So this honestly should just win us the game, and that's the strength about Instant Mimikyu Calyrex is if you can bait your opponent to Dynamaxing early, get Trick Room up, and just KO them right as you get Trick Room up, it puts you in an absolutely phenomenal position. So yeah, there's Max Hailstorm. That's going to come out. That is going to one-shot the Thundurus. Beautiful. Cool. And I just think it's really hard for my opponent to win now because I still have 2 turns of Dynamax, multiple turns of Trick Room, and my Calyrex Ice Rider is now at +3 attack. And I can even increase my special defense, right? Via Max Quake as well. So it's like we can basically make the Fini completely... Well, I was going to say completely useless, but it does have Nature's Madness. Now, Nature's Madness has a little bit less utility in this format with Dynamax, but still a very strong option. So, yeah, I mean, their restricted Pokemon was Zacian, which is typically good against Calyrex Ice Rider if Trick Room doesn't go up. But with Trick Room being up here, like, I have nothing to worry about. So, we're going to make the same play of targeting Zacian, even though it's very likely Zacian protects. Fini just applies no pressure in a Calyrex right now. So, I'm just going to go for Max Quake. And is there any reason to switch out here? One like advantage of switching out would be giving special defense boost to something via Max Quake, but I think Fini actually getting the boosts here is fine. Mimikyu getting the boost is fine because we have Pixie Plate, so Play Rough actually does okay damage into Tapu Fini. So yeah. And you can see here, like, my opponent has not protected either their Thundurus or their Zacian, and I think that actually makes a lot of sense because if they go for the safe protects, they will just lose the game. So they're basically hoping for me to mess up and get greedy and make a over prediction here. But in this position, there's really no need to go for any advanced read, right? So we get the knockout there, and this is the great thing about Mimikyu, right? Disguise just gives you kind of a buffer, and that's where, like, us leading the Incident Mimikyu, normally you would think, oh, it's into a Defiant Thundurus, it's really bad, but the reality is that there really wasn't much they could do to actually get the knockout onto the Mimikyu. And as soon as we see it's Defiant, you know, it's very likely that they're not carrying Defiant and Taunt as well. So there's more confidence that we can just Trick Room with Mimikyu on turn 1 of this game. So, yeah. And the idea behind that U-turn play is that, like, you know, let's say Muddy Water had missed the Incineroar, and Incin actually stays out on the field going into turn 2, then we're actually in a pretty awkward position. So what's really critical about this team is just getting in the Calyrex in as quickly as possible while also setting up Trick Room. So that's why U-turn always works on turn 1. Anyway, their last one is Landorus, so yeah, they basically had nothing for Calyrex Ice Rider outside of that Zacian in this game. So this is just the beauty of Calyrex Ice Rider in this format, where it can just completely snowball games and win you a game in like 1 or 2 turns, especially if your opponent commits their Dynamax before you. And, you know, as we've seen in a lot of the Dynamax formats we've played through, a lot about what can give you an advantage is if you can bait your opponent into maxing first, and so then like you have extra turns of Dynamax, and then if your Pokemon can just one-shot theirs or deal large amounts of damage and not take much from them in return, and you have Dynamax, like extra turns of Dynamax to play with afterwards, it's obviously just such a big advantage. So yeah, that was a great demonstration of how good Calyrex Ice Rider can be in this format, so let's keep it going. Like I mentioned, I played a couple of practice games with the team, so with that, we're now in Ultra Ball tier, so hopefully we can get to Master Ball tier pretty soon, and then, yeah, I'm excited to see what's kind of dominant in Master Ball tier right now. But next game of the day, and we're actually up against an opposing Calyrex Ice Rider team. Now, they have Torkoal, which is really scary, but the key thing to note is that they don't have any ground resists. This also could theoretically be a game for Dynamax Regigigas, but we have to be very careful about that, because it gets one-shot by a lot of things here. The interesting thing here is that Dusclops is Helping Hand, so we could even theoretically go like Dusclops Alecki, Helping Hand Max Lightning. I have to be careful because I don't know how fast their Calyrex Ice Rider is. They have both Incin and Torkoal, and it's like Calyrex can deal large amounts of damage to both, but Incin with Intimidate and a Parting Shot can just instantly neutralize us, which is really scary. I think my Incin for sure we bring. I mean, Urshifu's not a bad bring here. It actually hits a lot for super effective. Just, what does my opponent lead with? Could see them just going with Incineroar. I do feel like maxing Calyrex here is the right approach, because we get so much utility out of Max Quake. Just figuring out who to bring. There's actually a small chance we max Urshifu as well, which is interesting. I think Incin generally is just safe as a lead here, so I don't mind that. And I'm actually pretty intrigued in Incin plus Urshifu, because it punishes an Urshifu lead on their end, I think. With Calyrex and Mimikyu in the back. I think if my Dusclops had Pain Split and Nightshade, like the standard Dusclops set, I would just bring it here because it can hold its own against Torkoal, where I can like take an Eruption and then Pain Split. But without either of those attacks, I think the Dusclops generally has less utility here. If I had Will-O-Wisp on Dusclops, that would also be super good for us, but they don't have any of those. So, let's see. They're going to go with Porygon and Incin. Okay, that works for me. Mainly curious who is the faster Fake Out here. Also curious about the item choice on their Calyrex. Like, I think one thing that's a really big deal here is if we can knock out their Incineroar so that it paves the way for our Calyrex, right? And they have a faster Intimidate here. Actually, both of their Pokemon are faster. Okay, interesting. I wonder if they even want to Trick Room then, honestly. I think I'm fine losing my Focus Sash here. Like, I'll still go for the Fake Out onto the Porygon, and then just Surging Strikes here into Incineroar. Like, we'll probably trade Fake Outs, and that's fine with me. They could also Fake Out my Incin, but then it would allow me to get a free Surging Strikes into their Incin, and it's like, what does Porygon do? So, this is kind of why I wanted to lead Urshifu, but both of their Pokemon being faster, and then my Incineroar and Porygon getting a special attack boost via download is certainly a little bit scary. So, yeah. If you're going with these two, I expect Torkoal Calyrex as the back two. I don't think Indeedee makes that much sense in this matchup. Yeah, so there's Fake Out. Okay, they're actually going to target Incineroar, which I'm more than okay with here. Like I mentioned, I think we get a huge advantage in this game if we're able to just knock out their Incineroar early on. Now, I think they'll probably survive this if they're buried, so let's see. But dealing this amount of damage into Incineroar early on is already amazing, and it potentially puts them in Aqua Jet KO range, like a U-turn Aqua Jet this next turn. Yeah, I think that should be actually enough to finish it off next turn, which is really sweet. Actually, just Aqua Jet by itself should be enough, which is awesome. And they Trick Room. I mean, that could not have played out any better, honestly, I think. Now, the main thing here to watch out for is Insing going out into Calyrex-I Rider. And what we don't want to do is U-turn to activate a policy on that. However, I could just Flare Blitz, but I think U-turning out here is fine. So we're going to U-turn, but not into Instant because I don't want to activate policy. So I'm going to target the Porygon slot. And I'm still going to... Well, actually, I think Instant should always switch here, truthfully. But who would you go out into? Torkoal would actually maybe be your best bet. Torkoal would actually be pretty scary here, right? It would be. I just went for Aqua Jet, but if I were my opponent, I would hard switch Instant into Torkoal here. But they don't. Okay, nice. I mean, that's lucky for us, but I think that could have been a lot worse. Because the thing is, now I just got rid of the biggest threat into my Calyrex. Actually, I say that's the biggest threat, but I would say Torkoal's very much also a very big threat to us. Going to Mimikyu here is interesting because I can actually reverse their Trick Room, and I might consider doing that right now because we have a pretty early lead given the knockout onto their Incineroar. Like, they can't intimidate and, like, slow down my Calyrex as much now, so it has more snowball potential. And they actually end up try-attacking into the Incin slot. Wow, okay. That makes sense because you're probably expecting a Detect or Protect from Urshifu, but with the Focus Sash there and the Aqua Jet, I had pretty little incentive to go for that. So what's interesting now is, like, let's say you bring out Calyrex-I Rider. Well, I can just switch Urshifu out into Incineroar and then go for Will-O-Wisp on the Calyrex. And Calyrex is probably going to be the Pokemon my opponent is looking to Dynamax. I actually think Torkoal, for that reason, is a really strong max option because it can actually potentially one-shot my my Calyrex. So they're going to bring theirs out. Yep, no surprise there. So we've seen Tri-Attack and Trick Room on Porygon. Normally I would think Recover and then one of Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, Shadow Ball, but you could also run like Foul Play and self-Foul Play your Calyrex, which is actually a fair amount of damage, so I'd be kind of surprised if it's actually Policy here, but it could be Policy and just like, you know, you don't have a great way to self-activate it. I'm just going to go for Will-O-Wisp on a Calyrex here and switch out into Incineroar. Like, the whole idea of conserving our Incineroar was to deal with their Calyrex, right? So yeah, I think we are in a super, super good spot right now. And the main thing is that they gave up their Incineroar with very little gain. And them setting up Trick Room on turn 1 was also interesting. Like, I think they probably felt threatened by the Urshifu, but truthfully, the fact that we got so much free damage and essentially free knockout into Incin is so big in a matchup in which we both have Incineroar and Calyrex-I Rider. And I think we generally have a really big matchup advantage here. So they're just going to go for Glacial Lance, which is smart. I think if you had committed Dynamax into Calyrex, then you get burnt, the game's just immediately over. So I like that play a lot from my opponent's end. It's a crit onto Incineroar, but that's fine. Breaks my Disguise. I mean, I'm curious about what Porygon goes for here. You could like even Vida reset the Trick Room, which would be interesting. But they're just going to try attack, which is fine. We are Assault Vested here, so we really shouldn't take too much damage. It's actually more than I would have liked, but the main thing here is connecting on Will-O-Wisp. Like, that should put us in a absolutely fantastic position. And I hear someone vacuuming outside, so I don't know if that the mic is catching on that. Hopefully it's not too loud. That is quite loud, oh my gosh. Okay, anyway, now we've got Calyrex and Porygon and they're burnt, right? We got this intimidated, so Calyrex does no damage. All I want to look for is a safe switch into my Calyrex and then activate the policy on it. So I also don't want to give them any boosts. I could just hard switch into Calyrex right now, but then it risks Porygon try-attacking into the Incineroar slot. I also have a Fake Out right now, so I actually think it's fine to go for Play Rough just onto their Porygon and Fake Out onto it. Actually, it's better to Fake Out Calyrex, because they're probably going to try-attack the Incin slot. I don't want Calyrex to get an attack boost here. They actually just end up forfeiting. Yeah, this was going to be a really, really hard game to play out of from their position because... but I think they could still win because you still have Dynamax options with Porygon as well as Torkoal. So it wasn't completely over, but as soon as that burn happens and they gave up Incin, it just put us in a fantastic position. So, yeah. That game just demonstrated the strength of like a strong early game where we just got such a big lead. And this matchup was like a little bit more in our favor, I'd say, and what they needed to probably do is play towards Dynamax Torkoal, but maybe their Torkoal is like not the Eruption set, and it's like Body Press, Yawn, Burning, Jealousy, Protect, and if that's the case, then yeah, you don't really have as much room to Dynamax the Torkoal with. So yeah, And I think in this matchup, like, we have the advantage because our Trick Room user in Mimikyu has Will-O-Wisp, whereas their Porygon can't really have as much disruption. And they actually very kindly set up Trick Room for us turn 1 while allowing a free Surging Strikes into Instant. So, like, we already had a big lead on turn 1, and then as soon as they give up Instant, it's just a lot harder for them to cover for Calyrex. So, yeah. Alright, third game of the day, and it's an Eternatus team. That's very cool. We didn't really go up against, or, like, Eternatus was a lot more common in Series 10 than Series 8. I think one thing that's interesting is adjusting from the previous format into this one, because, you know, like, things like Eternatus and Xerneas were a lot more common than they were back in Series 8. So, Eternatus wasn't bad in Series 8, but it definitely wasn't, like, the strongest, and definitely is... I would say, like, I would expect Meteor Beam plus Power Herb more often than not, so, yeah. Now, a couple things to note for my opponent's team. They are almost entirely special. The only physical damage comes from Incineroar, which actually is not bad physical damage with the Sun into Calyrex Ice Rider. And I can't Will-O-Wisp it, so I actually have to be very careful about that. I could definitely see, like, an Incin lead. I could also see an Indeedee plus Hatterene lead. Snarl from AV Incin gives us so much utility in this game, so we're definitely going to want to take advantage of that. Gastrodon is interesting. Like, I don't think Urshifu is already that strong here. I definitely want to get Snarls up. I'm just trying to think what the lead matchup should be here. Because, like, maybe I just go for some play roughs. I think I like leading the Mimikyu. Do I really want to Lecky as the last one? I think Urshifu is more utility because of Focus Sash here. Like, we're going up against a team that looks like it wants to set up Trick Room. And this is actually favorable for us in the sense that we don't necessarily need Trick Room to win the game. Like, with this team, more often than not, you're going to need Trick Room to win, but because they have a Trick Room mode on their end and they have a Torkoal, which is really threatening to Calyrex, I don't need it as much. And this is great. Yeah, this is the lead I was hoping to see, because what I can do is just pressure with some good damage on turn 1, right? Like, I can just Snarl and play rough. I could also even, if I'm expecting Hat to Trick Room, reverse their Trick Room, but what I really don't want to do is just give them an opportunity to max the Hatterene and then set up Trick Room for them. Because I also see a world in which they max Hat here, right? Like, who are their best max options with this team? Hatterene actually feels like it's by far the best, so... Yeah, I'm content to just Snarl and play rough on turn 1, truthfully, and then just go from there. Like, even if you set up Trick Room... and you go for Follow Me. Oh, they're just expanding Force, actually. Okay. No Follow Me is interesting. I could have actually targeted Hat, but I don't even think we would KO it there. Indeedee being faster is good information. Okay. Disguise is busted. It might just be a double expanding Force, honestly. Not bad damage from Play Rough. Oh, it's eject button? Oh, okay. That is neat. That will give my opponent a free switch in. But the thing is, let's say you go into Torkoal now, like, your Torkoal and your Hatterene needs a special attack drop. It's Torkoal or Gastrodon, I would think. I guess you could go into Eternatus as well, but that's Gastrodon, yeah. So the thing is, this is where Snarl and AV just give us so much utility, right? Unfortunately, we don't miss there, which is absolutely huge. It's honestly not bad damage on a Hat and Gastrodon either. Like, trip damage is nice because it just sets up the KOs for Calyrex Ice Rider, and they actually just go for Dazzling Gleam. Okay. That works for me. I mean, you don't even get Trick Room up that way. You don't deal that much damage, and now I can actually look to... I just want to double up on a Hatterene here. Well, Trick Room going up here actually wouldn't be too bad, right? Well, Hatterene's still kind of annoying. Like, I'm down to play Flare Blitz and play Rough into Hat here. Like, maybe Hat protects, but Gastrodon won't deal that much damage at -1, and it actually switches out, okay. Back out into Indeedee, that's fine. Does Hatterene protect? It does not. Beautiful. So this should get the knockout, I would think. Actually, maybe not. I feel like... Okay, it does. Play Rough just did a little bit less than I expected, so I was thinking... Yeah, I was a little bit nervous that it would put it in a range where it could survive. Now the thing is, though, my opponent can actually bring out that Eternatus, and, like, you're in a mode where you don't need to... Oh. They just did not bring their Eternatus. That's a bold strategy. Don't think it'll pay off for them here. I get why, though, because Eternatus is so weak into Calyrex Ice Rider that they're thinking, hey, like, if they get Trick Room up, I don't have a great way to deny Trick Room, I'm saying from their perspective. Yeah, you just really struggle against Calyrex. But, I don't know, I think if they had, like, it was Power Meteor Beam and they brought it out right now, I'd actually be in a really awkward position. So, I'm glad to not see it come out here, because I think it just puts us in a very winning spot. I'm going for Snarl. I've got Urshifu in the back. I'm fine to just Snarl and play rough here. I would think Indeedee protects, but maybe he just clicks... Okay, Follow Me is honestly the best case scenario here, because I'm never targeting Torkoal with Mimikyu anyway, so... I think helping hand, protect, or expanding Force All would have been more scary to see here. So, yeah, this game has gone as well as possible, truthfully. Okay, so we get the knockout onto it. Torkoal's at -1. They still have not maxed, but, like, this is the awkward thing for them, right? Like, they don't necessarily want to set up Trick Room, but at the same time, I think they would have been better off setting up Trick Room and then just trying to sweep with Hatterene and Torkoal under Trick Room. I think the main weakness here is that their team is just too reliant on special damage, and so, like, it gets countered really hard just by Snarl Incin by itself, right? Giving us a really big advantage. So I'm just going to go for another Snarl here. At this point, we have a guaranteed way to get the weakness policy activated on the Calyrex Ice Rider, so that's what we're going to play towards. Yeah, and they actually just end up forfeiting. Now, I think there's still a slight chance for them to win if we miss a lot of Snarls and, you know, you get some crits along the way, and maybe if Gastrodon has Muddy Water or some accuracy drops. But yeah, that was just not exactly the easiest matchup for them, and their team just relied way too much on special damage. Like, without any physical damage, it was... We got so much utility out of AB Incineroar, right? So, if they click Trick Room turn 1, then you could potentially max Hatterene turn 2, but the reality is that, like, they had very few answers to deal with AB Incin. I think their best bet was probably the Eternatus, but then they actually left that on the bench probably because they were nervous about Calyrex Ice Rider. So, yeah. This is one of those examples where that's why in team building it's often good to have like a split of physical and special damage, so like you don't just like really struggle against one Pokemon or one common move or set, for example. So yeah, either way, it's been a basketball game, so we'll look for a fourth here. Cool. With that, we actually were able to hit Master Ball tier, so yeah, nice to get there immediately, and I'm just excited to see what players who have reached Master Ball tier are using at this point. So let's play a fourth one to end the first game of the, or first episode of this season, I should say. And it's another Zacian team with Rotom-Wash, Landorus, and Thundurus. So this is really speaking to me right now, my VGC 2013 roots. And then Ditto, which is interesting because it was, you know, one of my favorite Pokemon in Series 10, but wasn't as common in Series 8, I feel like. But I think, you know, I personally think it was actually one of the most underplayed Pokemon in Series 10, despite it being as good as it was. So yeah, really interesting stuff here. Obviously, their primary max options are going to be Thundurus, Landorus, and Rotom, and as we just saw in one of the previous games, I have to be a little bit careful about activating Defiant here. Umbreon is also a problem. How do they deny me Trick Room, though, is the question. It would be, like, Thundurus plus Zacian lead if I were to lead Incin. Didn't bring Dusclops out at all today, but I don't know. I just don't really love it here. And I think Mimikyu with Will-O-Wisp has so much value. It's like kind of wild. If I were them, I would go Thundurus Zacian, I think. But if you go Thundurus Zacian, I can just fake you out, right? I'm gonna go with Urshifu as my fourth because I don't love my Umbreon matchup here. So what's the goal here? Number one is to set up Trick Room, but like Ditto is always just a complete wild card that I have to consider as well, which is pretty scary. Umbreon in general is obnoxious, especially because it can foul play my Calyrex. I don't even know if I would think a +2 Hailstorm KOs, but not 100% sure. They're actually just gonna lead the Ditto. Oh wow, that's cool. Now, normally leading Ditto is a little bit scary, right? Because you have no idea what you're copying. But in this case, I think it's actually a very fantastic play by my opponent because you get information reveal immediately, right? So that in itself is valuable. And then copying Mimikyu here is actually so good for them. Because, yeah, like I can't click Fake Out into it. They get to see my moveset as well, so you know I have Will-O-Wisp. What's really interesting here is, do you actually try to reverse my Trick Room on turn 1? The other thing is they could just Shadow Sneak and Behemoth Blade into Mimikyu turn 1 as well. Wow, that's cool. That's cool. So how do I cover for Shadow Sneak, Behemoth Blade, as well as them reversing my Trick Room and Behemoth Blading? Fake Out. Man, I mean, I lean towards Fake Out and Will-O-Wisp onto Zacian, but I just don't think they're going to ever let me get this off, because they know I have Will-O-Wisp. Okay, we're going to get it off, though. Sweet. As long as we don't miss Will-O-Wisp. Please, please, please. They have the Rotom. Yeah, they went for the sneak play. Oh, if we hit the Will-O-Wisp, it's so good. They've got the Rotom. I don't have it. Please, Mimikyu. Please, just one time. Oh, thank you. Basically, in that turn 1, I thought there were like a couple possibilities they could go for. They could go for Shadow Sneak and Behemoth Blade. They could go for Trick Room and Behemoth Blade, trying to reverse my Trick Room. Or they could protect the Zacian, Trick Room, or Shadow Sneak with Mimikyu. Like, them copying the Mimikyu honestly opened up a huge, just like, window of opportunities and plays that they could make. What do I want to do right now? Burning the Zacian's obviously good, but like, I still ideally have to get Trick Room up. So I think I don't mind. Does Shadow Sneak and Behemoth Blade even KO my Mimikyu right now? I'm not sure it does. Well, I'll go for Trick Room here. And I just went for Flare Blitz onto the Mimikyu, but I think I like targeting Zacian more there. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Blade is still going to KO, right? If it doesn't, they're in a lot of trouble, but I think U-turn was also a better play there. Yeah, because if I U-turn out, I can just bring Calyrex out. Yeah, I did still get the knockout. And I guess the issue now is that they can burn my Calyrex, right? Man, them copying Mimikyu actually just, like, makes everything so much harder for me. So that was so cool for them to lead Ditto, because it's like, even if Ditto were to copy, and we actually, Flare Blitz get a burn there, so that's kind of fortunate. Okay. It's also funny to see, like, Disguise, the Ditto interaction with Disguise. I actually wasn't sure about that. Okay, well now I can bring out Urshifu. The truth is that their Calyrex Ice Rider matchup is still really scary, especially if you have Thundurus and Landorus in the back, right? So, like, right now, they could go for a Shadow Sneak to break Sash, and then, I don't know, maybe a Play Rough if they're running it. I think Aqua Jet here should KO. And then I'm down to just Aqua Jet and Flare Blitz here. Because I just want to cover for Play Rough. Okay, they switch out. That makes sense. Maybe into... Oh, into Rotom. Hello, my old friend. It has been a while. Good switch by them. Great switch. Mainly curious about the Rotom set. And they have Play Rough. Ooh, okay, that's not great for us. It doesn't do that much damage, though, so I actually didn't need to go for Sneak there. Or, sorry, Aqua Jet. I could have gone for Surging Strikes instead. Okay, we don't KO the Zacian. That's actually kind of awkward, I think. Aqua Jet obviously guarantees a KO. Rotom can Dynamax right now, which is scary. They still have Ditto, which can copy out my Incineroar. Aqua Jet would get the KO, though, if they switch out into Ditto here. So I'm down to Aqua Jet just to guarantee the knockout there. And... I think I'm okay going for a Snarl here. Okay, so they're not going to max Rotom this turn. My fear is a Nasty Plot. They just T-Ball. Okay. I'm generally okay with that, but this is dangerously getting scary now. The thing is that Rotom's going to be at minus... Just, are you Will-O-Wisp Rotom? It's also interesting because Play Rough Zacian was not very common in Series 8 from what I remember. At least in the beginning, but it was something that like saw generally more utility in Series 10. Okay, Landorus is their last one. So it's like Calyrex is in a good spot, right? But I have to knock 3 different Pokemon out, and I obviously can't deal that much damage in a Rotom, and I'm eating up an Intimidate right now. The thing is, if I were my opponent right now, what would I do? I'm also Assault Vested, which means I could potentially self-U-turn to activate a policy, but what they can do is switch Landorus out into a Ditto to copy Incin and get another Intimidate off. And then Dynamax Rotom to max Geyser into the Incineroar slot. I could Trick Room here, but I almost want to just go for the max Quake reading into the switch-in. That'd be sick. I also might survive a Max Geyser here. Okay, I went for Trick Room U-turn. Let's see if they make the switch. They do, okay. I was so close to clicking Max Quake there, but it just like would make us look so silly. But if Rotom here, like let's say we survive a Max Geyser, I get Trick Room up, but then I'm still in only neutral attack. But I guess I don't really need attack boost with Calyrex to necessarily win this one. Oh, they're nasty plot. Okay, that changes a lot. That changes a lot. That's where actually if we had Max Quaked, because the problem is, I activate Policy, but the thing is now their Incin gets a free Fake Out into my Calyrex. You'd also switch the Incin out, back out into, Actually, would you Fake Out here? You'd probably just switch out into Landorus, right? So +1 right now. The play I want to go for here is Glacial Lance and Snarl. I think I'm down for that. It's just a little bit risky because they could theoretically click Fake Out with the Incin, so maybe I should have just made the read that Incin was switching in there because it was so obvious. But then the thing is, I don't get Trick Room up. Yeah, they're going to switch though. Okay, this is good. This is really good, right? Because I knock out the Landorus, at least I assume so. And I get a Snarl off into Rotom, so it's back at neutral. But the issue now is I just don't think I have enough damage to deal with the Dynamax Rotom. I'm betrayed by Rotom. Rotom's actually, I didn't realize how good it was into our main core. Like, if I could pick, like, a Pokemon in the format that matches up well against Incin, Mimikyu, and Calyrex, Rotom is actually it. Yeah. Okay, so we get Glacial Lance off. Okay, gets the knockout there. I mean, it's going to be a close finish. What's interesting here is, like, who do you guys are? You would think it's Calyrex, right? I might even Dynamax Incineroar as crazy as it seems. I don't think that's actually the right call, but I don't know. There is a slight argument to be made for it because we can max Bug. Alright, here's Geyser. Let's see. Yeah, okay, they actually target Incin, which means their Ditto doesn't copy anything. Which means now Calyrex can Dynamax and Max Quake to just get the knockout onto it. This is hilarious. And by Max Quaking, I also get a special defense boost, but the question is, would I rather Max Quake or Hailstorm? Either way, I get an attack boost from it. Yeah, Ditto not be able to copy anything here is huge. 3 turns to Trick Room, 2 turns to Dynamax. Special defense. It's special defense, right? Because, like, they're gonna Geyser and change the weather anyway. Yeah. So we'll just Max Quake here. I was thinking, oh yeah, you know, with Max Hailstorm we have residual damage, but I think now we are in a pretty good spot. The key thing in this game was, like, neutralizing Zacian early on, although I guess, like, how much of that Will-O-Wisp actually matter? Because in the grand scheme of things, well, it meant that they couldn't really deal much damage into the Zacian, or sorry, into the Incineroar on our end, which is important. Wait, they're slower? I totally didn't consider that possibility. Okay, I think it's still fine, but wow. Like Hailstorm there, I think would always actually just win us the game. Oh, wow. I did not see that as a possibility. Like, I was just like, we always should just outspeed and get the knockout. Wait, so is it like Iron Ball Ditto? That's wild. I think we're still okay because we have 1 extra turn of Dynamax relative to our opponent. But the debate between Hailstorm and Quake there is clear because because of the fact that I just wasted. Oh my god. Oh, that's, you know what? I can't even be mad, but that's wild. I mean, the interesting thing here is I still have a turn of Dynamax, and so it's Ally Switch, Nasty Plot, Hydro Pump, and I presume Thunderbolt. But it was like if I just Hailstorm the Rotom slot that turn previously, or the Ditto slot, it was always a guaranteed win. 230 down to 131. Oh my goodness. Kudos to them. That's like, they found the one way to win this game. Now, it's still actually, like, the thing is, I have Hail, and I'm going to change the weather here this turn, and Unnerve. So it's like, who ally switches here? Is that Iron Ball, like, am I wild, or does Transform have priority? Because we're so slow here. We're 49 speed. I just didn't think Transform would go before we attacked. That's crazy. That's really cool, though. I need to make the right target selection here. They also need to hit their Hydro Pump still. Ditto did go for the ally switch. Oh, wow. I mean, they played the last 3 turns perfectly, though, and this is one in which, like, if I just Hailstormed the Ditto rather than Quaking, like, I just didn't consider the fact that they would actually outspeed us under Trick Room. That's wild. So, you would think they just Hydro Pump now. Actually, you could just try to go for 2 Thunderbolts as well. There you go for Hydro Pump. Now we're in Thunderbolt KO range. That's wild. They found the one way to win this one. The thing about the ally switch there is, let's say I read into the ally switch, and I don't call it correctly. It's like I just knock out the Ditto and then Hydro Pump hits us. Maybe they don't have T-Bolt. Like, that's also a possibility. But, I mean, props to them because, yeah, that was the one way they could win this game. And, like, I really messed up by not considering the fact they could transform into their own Rotom and then get Levitate. I also just, like, didn't consider the fact that they could outspeed us under Trick Room, so... and then it was the ally switch on top as well, which I didn't consider as a possibility. So that was a really cool comeback by them. That's one in which, like, I definitely get really frustrated losing games like that because it's, like, inexcusable to lose because, I just didn't consider the possibility of Ditto outspeeding us. So, yeah. We can actually check our opponent's team from that last one as well. So, taking a look, it was Play Rough and Behemoth Blade, Sub Protect. See, this is a max HP, which is actually pretty interesting. No speed investment. Safety Goggles Thundurus, so it was actually defensive Thundurus. Lumberry Landorus. The Umbreon here with Choppleberry. Citrus on Rotom. That's the ally switch. And yep, it was Min Speed Ditto. Yeah, so it wasn't Iron Ball, it was Focus Sash, and that makes so much sense. I just, yeah, I learned the hard way, because that was a game in which, like, I never thought the difference between going for Hailstorm or Quake Throw would actually matter, because, but the thing is there, like, you always have to Hailstorm just because, like, even, let's say, Ditto naturally was faster than Calyrex, you'd have to consider the possibility of Iron Ball, but yeah, I had to learn Ditto's speed the hard way here today. So this is an argument to be made as to why you might not want to be like just max speed and why like the speed investment on Ditto actually matters. I've never seen that actually come to relevance before today, but that's fascinating. So yeah, props to my opponent because like I said, like they made the perfect 3-turn end game play there, and it's once again this is one of the games where like it stings to lose so hard because like you had the win right in front of you and like everything went wrong. But it's also like these are the matches where you really learn from the best, right? And so it's like now I'll never mess up an end game scenario against Ditto, however rare that might be. So yeah. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one. So thanks so much as always for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Don't forget to answer the question of the day, and I'll see you all soon. All right. Peace.